searching and you wonder, well, it's not too much to wonder about, but some of these things you hear what they're putting their trust in, and you go, is it something that you want to trust in, or is it something that you want to give up to have faith? And so that's pretty heavy. I mean, that's you, and you're right. A lot of people, they look at everything, the economy, they look at politics, and they try to do a lot of pointing and say, well, why would God let this happen to me or our nation? And so we really have to bring that stuff in perspective. And
Mhm.
but that's very powerful. What you're saying is very powerful. Go ahead, Nina. I'm sorry, I didn't
Well,
mean to cut
oh,
you off.
sorry.
Yeah, I just want to insert right here. I just became aware that we were not live until just
Oh,
this moment. So
wow.
our audience has missed the first part of our discussion. So I want to bring y'all up to date. We've got Mia Pyle with us today, and we're
We're not
talking
live.
about the connection
Woo.
between spirituality and mental health. And one of the things that Mia had
Mm-hmm.
just brought up was how often people's first introduction to God in particular might be something that leads them to believe that God is capricious and they can't trust him with their happiness. And therefore, they
Mm.
don't want anything to do with God. So we were talking about how can we present God to people in a way
Mm-hmm.
that does not give them that impression. The example that she gave was a little girl whose mother died when she was young. She was
Mm-hmm.
told, well, God has taken your mother to be with him. And she got angry
Mm-hmm.
at God and thought, well, God doesn't need my mother. I need my mother.
Right.
Mhm.
Why would God do that? So she began to see God
Mm-hmm.
as being someone who is not to be trusted. And Mia had just made the point that if we see God as someone who he's fine as long as I'm following him, but if I don't follow him, he's going to punish me and he's going to kill me eventually. And
Mm-hmm.
that's the hallmark of an abuser. So,
Right.
and obviously, God is not an abuser. So, we were
Right.
discussing how
Right.
do we get
Nope.
to that place where we can present God in a way that is more true, reflects his true
Mm-hmm.
character,
Yeah.
and Rodney was talking about that. One of the things I wanted to insert
Mm-hmm.
here is that
Mm-hmm.
maybe it's helpful also, I think, to kind of start with, look, we all live in a fallen world. You can look around us and you can see that already. So we're already headed toward death.
Mm-hmm.
We've already got bad things coming our
Mm-hmm.
way, and we've got a God who is trying to spare us from much of that. But
Mm-hmm.
even when we go through some of that,
Right.
who is going to use those very things for our benefit, for our good.
See, and that's so powerful because
Mm-hmm.
your
And
spiritual belief system is
uh,
now supporting you. And if it's supporting
mhm.
you, then that means it's going to support your nervous system, right? Because you
Right,
are not
right.
living in fear or
Mhm.
that the bottom is going to fall out. And that even if it
Right.
does, that God is with me, He's for me, He's going to support me, right? And I
Mhm.
want to just highlight really important, where I'm getting this from, multiple places, but one of them is a study that Baylor University did, and it's an old study. It was done in 2005, 2007,
Mhm.
but it's very telling.
Mhm.
It said that at that time, it was believed that America had four gods, okay? Four gods, not just one God in God we trust, but four gods. And this is all from a
Mm.
mindset, right? Of how we see God. Remember, we get to believe what you get to believe what
Ooh,
you
okay.
want, but what you believe has power over you. And so how
Right.
you
Mhm.
believe about God will actually impact what you believe about yourself, right? So the idea of our brains, the way it works is you think a thought, you feel, and then you have an outcome, right? But it all is based in experience. What are the experiences of life that I've had that are informing me? What is my experience with God? And so in this study, they said that there were a group of people that saw God as an authoritarian God, okay? Authoritarian in the sense, this God is like,
Mhm.
do what I say or else,
Mhm.
the God who's going to cause, hurricanes and thunderstorms to happen because you're not following me, and I'm going to hurt you to get your attention, right? And you better do it and you better not question me.
Mm.
And then there were people that believed in a God that was a critical God, right? Nothing's ever good enough.
Mhm.
whatever you do, it's not good enough. You could have done better. Okay, you got an A, why not an A plus? And
Mm.
Yeah.
people that have been in critical relationships with others, right? If you've ever been in a critical relationship with
Mm-hmm.
a person, you just feel like you're walking on eggshells, like I can never please this person. And so a lot of people were having
Mm-hmm.
that type of godly or spiritual experience. And then there was a group of people who just believe that God is a distant God. He's not really involved in
Mm-hmm.
your life. He kind of got things started and then backed away,
Mm-hmm.
kind of like a
Mhm.
distant parent. You
Mm.
know, how many people live in one parent families these days, right? And they've got that distant parent
Mm-hmm.
who's, you're here somewhere, or maybe you come when I'm in trouble. Like I don't
Mhm.
hear from you till I've done
Mm-hmm.
something wrong, and now you're present. You know
Right.
what I mean?
Right.
And so, lastly,
Mm.
the last group of people believed in a benevolent God, which it sounds like, that's what you were
Mm-hmm.
describing, Nina, a God who loves you
Mm-hmm.
no matter what. It's not a performance based love because you're doing so great. I love you and I'm going to
Right.
bless you, right?
Mhm.
But I
Right.
love you regardless. I love you when you're great. I love you when you're terrible, like, and I'm
Right.
here for you,
Right.
and I'm always here for
Wow.
you to help you, and I'm always here for you to support you. But I also love you enough to let you make choices and to live to live a life based on the choices you decide, right? Because I'm not a
Mm-hmm.
rapist, a
Mm-hmm.
rapist God that forces things on people.
Right. Right.
And so
Right.
these were the studies, but if you look at
Wow.
it, the majority of the people had a negative God view. The
That's very
small
powerful because so many
Mhm.
people, right.
Go ahead,
You were
Rodney.
saying, Rodney?
That's very powerful, Mia. I mean,
Mhm.
because yeah, people have such a, you start to learn, when you start talking about people, and nowadays you're starting to see that people are searching, and it's really telling, that the church really needs to get on it. They really need to get on what they're supposed to do, because now they're becoming so fragmented and people are stepping away from the church. And sadly,
Mhm.
people are out digging for things, and they're trying to find hope in anything other than, you know, Christianity, or having a faith and understanding and a relationship, a personal relationship with God. And everybody's relationship is different. And that's why we have to dig. We really have to dig and seek out. And that's what it, biblically it says, taste me, see if I'm good,
Yeah.
try me, and you'll see that I am there for you. And a lot of people just, they're kind of, they're using their mind, they're using other things to try to determine if this is real, and a lot
Yeah.
of times, people say, well, I've heard a guy say, I only believe what I can see. I'm like, can you see gravity? I'm like, go out there and jump off that cliff. That gravity works.
Mhm.
You don't have to see it for it to work, so that's very powerful. And we're here with Mia from Pain Unwasted, and she has a great organization. We had a little hiccup at the top, but we're glad that everybody is here. Want to say hello to AC Cruz. These are all of our people watching from around the nation and around the world. Jacqueline Edwards, Carrie, thank you so much for your comments. Everybody, we actually have Chris Bonds. Chris Bonds, we have new Chris Bonds, I see. So it's wonderful. And today's topic is mental health and spirituality. And how do we combine those two? Because it's very hard to have good, solid mental health and not have a correct perspective on spirituality. Because again, there's something out here far, far bigger than us all. And so to tap into that beautiful power, that beautiful resource, even, and when life does take you down those painful roads and those challenges, a lot of people feel like these things are trying to break me, but in all actuality, they give you strength. If you have the right perspective, they will give you strength. It's just like lifting weights. Yeah, the weights are heavy. If you don't lift them, you can look at them all day, you're not going to get stronger. But when you work out your faith, you get stronger, you get better, you have everything you need. What do you think about that, Nina?
Yeah, I think you're right, exactly right about that, Rodney. But I'm also thinking about what Mia just told us about the majority, what was
Mhm.
it? Did you say
The Baylor
75%?
study.
Yeah.
Hmm.
Yes,
Yeah.
that the majority of people
Wow.
see God in a negative light. They believe he's critical or
Mhm.
authoritarian or distant. And therefore,
Mm.
it seems to me that that for one thing means we have a challenge to
The problem.
overcome when we talk to people
Mhm.
about God already, because they've already got a preconceived notion and they're hearing everything through that filter. But the other thing that tells me is with that kind of belief, that means it's going to have a negative effect on their overall
Mhm.
health, their mental health, but also their physical health.
Physical
And
health.
that's
That's
the part
right.
I want to talk about, because this study and this Baylor study was for the public, but this is the Christian public. So the
Hmm.
people that we're looking at aren't people, it's a Christian public. They said America believes in four gods, right? So it wasn't that people didn't believe that God exists. It was how they
Right,
believed, right? And
right.
so a lot of these people
Mm.
that we're talking about, it's not that they won't be at church on Sunday or Saturday if you go on Saturday, right? It's not that they may even be leaders and teachers about God.
Mhm.
These may be people that are missionaries and evangelists.
Mhm.
And I can definitely say I was one, because if you would have asked me what
Mhm.
my belief about God was, I would have said all four. I believe God is good, but I definitely had the belief that, I better do it or else. and
Mhm.
and there's a scripture that says, by beholding we become changed, which means the belief that I hold in my mind about God affects how I believe about myself, and it's how I show up in the world. So
Yes.
if you think
Right.
about a person who's very critical, or a person who doesn't like to be challenged, or a
Mm.
person who sees people
Mhm.
suffering and says, well, they're suffering like that because God is dealing with them. Like I went to a country
Mhm.
that will go unnamed because I don't want it to, I
Right.
just think it's better if I don't name this country. But
That's
in this
right. That's
particular
right.
country, we were there as missionaries, and
Mhm.
it was a third world country, and so they were lifting bricks on a rope across the top of the people's heads, right? And the
Mhm.
rope snapped and a stack of bricks fell on a person's head, okay? And now blood was coming down and the person looked like really dazed. We're on a mission bus, so we're just like, oh no, right? But the people in that particular place, they were laughing at that person and they were pointing, and nobody was coming to help them. They were
Oh my.
laughing and
Mhm.
pointing at the person. And so we asked one of our team members that was from the country, why is this the
Mhm.
case? Like where I live, people be running like, are you okay? Do you need help? Because that person
Mhm.
was in trouble.
Injured.
And the
Right.
person told us, they said, well, here we believe that, when things like this happen, that person did something in their life, and that's why this is happening to them,
Mhm.
Oh,
So,
so
Mhm.
they
and it,
were laughing because of kind of like, aha, you just got found out.
yeah, you
We
deserve that.
just found out what you, yeah.
Yeah,
Oh
this is
my.
happening to you
Wow.
because you've done something and now it's coming back on you. But and as much
Well,
and as grotesque as it can sound to look at that country
right.
and say, how could y'all do that? There's so many people that believe that now, that believe that
Well,
when a
it's just
person's getting,
and Mia, but that's the same thing. I mean, really, I mean, we have the power of the internet. Thank goodness for YouTube and
Mhm.
the This Way Network. And I mean, and it shows like there's millions of shows that are out here. But the sad thing about this, and sometimes you open your email and someone sends you something, but it is so dark and so sad. You can see people in distress. And nowadays it's nothing to see somebody really in distress, and people stand around videotaping it and they
Yes,
posting this stuff. And I'm like,
yes,
my goodness. I'm like, don't you see this person is in distress?
hurting.
You should be either praying for that person, trying to help that person, intercede, go get help. If you don't want to get involved, call somebody, try to get help. The same cell phone that people are using
Mhm.
to make a mockery of these people instead of trying to assist them. I think that is the problem, that we sensationalize pain. You can look at it in the program. There's a lot of these reality shows and different things
Right.
like that. And they'll take you up to this mountaintop and then they'll just say, oh, you're not good enough, and they kick you off, and
Yeah.
that type of thing, that mentality is filtering down at how we treat each other, how we treat our children, how we just treat the normal, your everyday person in society. And some people, they think like, aha, look at that person, what they're going through. But the reality of it is, we all could fall under some kind of
Absolutely.
illness, some kind of breakdown. And you know, that's the reason why we shouldn't poke fun at people, because you never know that person that's right on the edge. And so that's why
Yeah.
we've got to show love to our fellow man, because a lot of times people, you know,
Excuse me.
you could be going through a really rough day, and you just need someone to smile and just to give you that little uplift. And then there are other people who will just, you know, kick you when you're down.
Mhm.
Yep.
You know,
Absolutely.
I'm wondering, as you were saying it,
You know.
I thought, you know, I can almost hear the scriptures that people are quoting in their heads to justify thinking this way. And one of those would be, well, it's the law of sowing and reaping. You know, we see
Mm-hmm.
it on display in front of us. So, what do you say to those people, Mia?
Right. So I'm so glad you brought that up because, we definitely want to know that. And I personally believe this. I do believe that the scriptures are there for us and not against us. Right.
Mhm.
And so I definitely believe that it's important for us
Mm-hmm.
as believers to inspect, hey, what type of God concept am I believing? And if it's hard for me to see that, then what's my self-talk? Because we're talking about mental health, right? So what's my
Mhm.
self-talk when I fall down, when I fall short? How what's my talk
Mm-hmm.
in my head when I see people in my life suffering,
Mm-hmm.
because
Mhm.
that is a good indication of the type of God that I'm believing. Even though I may, go to church or read my Bible, even having devotion, it's very easy to read the book from a certain lens, right? And,
Yes.
and, and we
Yes.
see this in the scriptures, like the Pharisees and
Mm-hmm.
the Sadducees. When you think about the Bible narratives, the Bible, the religious leaders had a certain idea about who and how Jesus was supposed to be. So when he came on the scene, they could not accept him because he was not like them. And they believed in lots of rules and
Mm-hmm.
lots of traditions, and they were manipulating the people and they were using the people, but God was setting them free. Jesus was walking around with a different example, right?
Mhm.
And so
Mhm.
why am I saying that? It's very
Mm-hmm.
easy to be thinking that I'm spiritual, to be thinking that I love God and I'm a representative of Christ, but I may
Mm-hmm.
be even reading the actual text from a certain lens, from a certain God concept that is not healthy,
Mm-hmm.
that is not helpful, that is actually against my mental health, right? And
Mhm.
so that is what I want to challenge people to ask those questions, and the best way we can do it, and this is going to sound controversial, so I'm really interested in what you all think, but there's a scripture that says
Mm-hmm.
examine yourself to see whether or not you're in the faith, right?
Mhm.
Like
Mhm.
to look at by
Mm-hmm.
their fruit, by their fruit you will know them. And
Mm-hmm.
this is very difficult because for someone like me, I just always think I'm not in the faith because I'm like, oh, I'm a, like
Mm.
Mhm.
some of us, we think so negatively of ourselves. We have
Mhm.
such low
Right.
self-esteem, right? That's
That's
something.
right.
But now let's analyze that though. If I think so negatively of myself and I'm just a wretched, poor, and filthy sinner, and how could anybody love me? Is that what the scriptures really say about me? Because it says you're
Mm.
fearfully and wonderfully made. It
Mhm.
says that you're
Mm-hmm.
a royal priesthood, a holy nation,
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
That's
So
right.
then the
Mhm.
question becomes, where am I focused? Because
Mhm.
in some faith
Mm-hmm.
traditions, there's a heavy focus on how filthy and wretched you are, but there's
Mhm.
Wow.
not a focus on your identity, your true identity in Christ, who God says you are,
Mhm.
how
Mm-hmm.
precious
Mhm.
you are,
Mm-hmm.
how he thinks about you more than the sand on the seashore, right? Which is the
Mhm.
Mm-hmm.
scripture. Like my
That's
Yeah.
thoughts
right.
towards
That's
you
right.
are more than the sand. So that
Mhm.
has to mean that God is not a distant God. If he's thinking about me and
Yeah.
you more
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
than the grains of sand on a seashore, and I mean,
Yeah.
I've
He
been
has.
to a seashore.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. He has more thoughts toward us, you know, in our favor than we could count the number of grains of sand on the seashore. And the idea, and I think
Wow.
about this too. I read this in a poem once. Amy Carmichael, I think it was so good. She said, if I think that the same God who washes the beaches, the sand, on the beaches of every ocean across the whole world 2 times every day, that he is not able to remove my sin and make me
That's right.
clean, then I know nothing of Calvary's love.
And can I just,
Wow.
that's so beautiful. That is so powerful. And I just want to be transparent, guys. You can tell me, and I don't know how much time we have for this kind of thing, but
We're good.
like, first of all, I don't know about you, but for me, when I used to hear about the cross, it used to anger me. I'm just going to be honest. You know why? Because
Mhm.
I grew up in a place where people say, "Look at what I've done for you. Now you should love me."
Yeah.
Because I've done this
Yeah.
for you, you
Mm.
should love me. So when I would hear about
Mm.
the idea that Jesus gave his life for me, for my sin, these are the thoughts that would come to my mind. But wait a minute, I didn't even ask to be born. How are you having to be tortured to death because of me? That didn't make me feel good. And I think that's something that
Mm.
Christians need to understand too, because sometimes some generations perhaps have this automatic belief about God, but generations coming behind may not see the narrative the same way, you know?
Right.
And so for
Right.
me, I
Mm.
was like, I didn't do anything. I didn't ask to be born. Why would you have to be tortured to death for me? I didn't even, I have this sin problem and I didn't even do anything. Why? This isn't fair.
Mhm.
And what I
Mhm.
really appreciate about the work of Dr. Timothy Jennings is the idea that consider that we are all born with the condition. We really are. You know,
Mm.
I'm born with the condition. I didn't do anything to get this condition, but I was born with it. And so when we
Mhm.
think about sin, sin is a condition that I'm born with. But guess what?
Correct.
Jesus has a remedy, right?
Right.
And he
Right.
doesn't
Mm.
force the remedy on me. But if I would like help,
Mhm.
if I would like a better experience with this
Mhm.
condition that I've been born with, he has help for me. That's what the
Right.
cross is. It's a remedy to my condition. I don't have to take it,
Mhm.
but now
Mhm.
my condition is going to take my life,
Yeah.
unfortunately. You know what I'm saying?
Yeah.
If I
Mhm.
don't take the medicine, if I don't take the remedy, I will suffer, you know? But I
Mhm.
don't have to. I don't have to. There is another option.
There's
Wow.
someone on YouTube, and I cannot remember his name at the moment. I'm so terrible with names. Um,
Mhm.
but anyway, he goes around witnessing, street witnessing to a lot of different people.
Mhm.
And one of the things I've heard him say over and over again, and ask people, he said, let's say about to go in to talk to someone who has a terminal illness. You've seen the X-rays, you know they're going to die. You have the cure in your hand, and you have the X-rays. When you go in to talk to them, do you
Mm.
show them the X-rays first, or do you offer them the cure? And a lot of people say, well, I give them the cure right away. And he's like, no, you show them the X-rays.
Yeah,
Because if they haven't seen the X-rays, they don't know they need the cure,
exactly.
and they won't take it.
Yes.
And I think that's
Mm.
part of what we're talking about. And what you just said when you talked about where you start with
Mhm.
people,
Mhm.
asking them those questions. What is your perception of? And
Mhm.
because you're
Mm.
helping them see
Wow.
through your questions and examine themselves and recognize, I do have a condition.
Yes.
I do have something that is not working in my favor and is
Yes.
not leading to my health and my well-being. But now what do I do about it? And
Right.
that's when you're able to give them the cure that is in your hand.
And see, and that cure can look
Wow.
as
That's
simple
beautiful.
as this. I'm having a conversation with a friend, and they're telling me how they're having marital disruption because as I listen, I can hear that there's selfishness on both sides. This person doesn't want to yield. This person doesn't want
Mm.
to yield. That's some fruit of the condition of our heart, right? That we want
Right,
what we want, no matter what,
Mhm.
no matter who, right? There's that
right.
fruit. But I don't have to say, you know what, friend, you're dealing with selfishness and Jesus died on the cross for that. You know, you need to accept him into your heart. No, it may sound like, wow, I can see that you guys are really struggling. And I'm so glad that you're sharing this with me as your friend. You know, something that I do when I don't know what to do is I pray. I pray and I ask God for wisdom, to give me wisdom, to send a person my way, to send a book my way that can help me with this specific problem. Can we pray together about this? You know, I don't want to push myself on you, but could we pray about this?
Mhm.
And so now what happens is that friend says, you know what, whatever, fine, you pray about it, you know? And when I
Right.
pray, I pray specifically. I say, God, you know, this is what's going on. She needs a book, a
Mhm.
friend, a show, a something that's specifically dealing with her issue. Please bring it her way so she will know that you heard
Mhm.
her prayer and that you're with her
Right.
and that there's help. Okay.
Mhm.
Amen.
Mhm.
Mhm.
And so many times I've seen God do it. I've seen him do it for myself. I've seen him do it for other people where it's like that prayer gets answered. They come back and they're like, oh my goodness, Mia, can you get my name? You know, or they may not even realize that,
Mhm.
hey, their prayer was answered. And so then I can bring it up. Hey, we prayed about that. Do you remember? And they're like, oh, we did.
Mhm.
You know,
Yes.
and so
Yes.
this
That's
is that
right.
opportunity for me now. I just shared God, but I didn't give this other part. Not that that doesn't come later, but it's like I'm
Mhm.
building a foundation that, hey, God cares enough about you to answer your prayers. God actually has oh,
Mhm.
somebody had that comment. Oh, bless you.
Yeah.
But like, you know, God actually hears my prayers.
Mhm.
Wait, God is actually real. Wait,
Mhm.
he took the time to send the solution my way. He sees me, you know, like
Mhm.
that just
That's
answered a
Mhm.
right.
lot of things in one moment, you know?
Yeah. And
Mhm.
I think too, um, recognizing those things helps you realize that all the bad things that come our way, the
Mhm.
uncomfortable things, and we think, well, why did God allow that? Well, sometimes you have to feel the symptoms
Mm,
before you seek help for the condition you
Yeah.
have, because you don't even know you've got a
Mhm.
condition until you start seeing those symptoms. And the symptoms are
That's
not
right.
necessarily oh, well, I made bad choices, therefore I'm having these symptoms. No, it's a result of your condition already. And therefore, these things are happening to you just like they happen to everyone who has that condition. That's all of us.
See, no, that's a hard one. You're so right, Nina. And I just agree with you 100%. But something you said,
Mm.
it triggered a thought in my head. What do I do when bad things happen to me and God, who
Mm.
says he loves me, lets it happen? And I'm not just talking about, you know, I broke my favorite dish in my kitchen, but
Mm.
I lose a
Right.
loved one.
Mhm.
A
Right.
person is raped. A
Mhm.
person
Mhm.
loses the job that they've always wanted or has
Yeah.
a health condition and it doesn't
Mhm.
look like it's getting better. They're in chronic pain, right?
Mhm.
What do I
Mhm.
do then?
Mhm.
How about that, right? Because
Yeah.
and you cut me off if you need to, but like I remember that for myself when I
Mm.
had my nervous breakdown and I was in a behavioral health
Mm.
hospital in the blue suit and people said, you know, you have this condition, right? And I remember thinking to
Mm.
myself, this has to be God's fault because how did I get here? You know, why did he let this happen and that happen
Mm.
and this happen and now I didn't know how to deal with it and here I am, you know?
Mhm.
And there are some things that happen in our life that are so painful. And I'm believing in God. He didn't
Mhm.
stop it. He didn't stop it.
Mhm.
And there are two things, and I'm not sitting here like I have the answers to these questions. I have, when I say I don't have the answer, but I do have some answers that have helped me. Does that make sense? A
Yes.
answer
Mm.
versus the
Right.
answer.
Mhm.
So you all know
Mhm.
from the last time I was on the show, my sister was abducted. People
Mhm.
raped her, left her on the side of the street for dead, and while we got her back alive, it was horrible. It was horrible. And I
Yeah.
still suffer from the
Imagine.
effects of that having happened. I can't sit here and be like, yeah, I'm a mental health coach. I do this, that I'm good now. No, I still suffer from that happening over 20 years ago. Right.
Mhm.
However,
I can
one
imagine.
thing,
Yeah.
yeah, am I sorry? One thing, God in prayer and wrestling with him, and that's what I want to say to somebody that's
Hmm.
watching this right now. I hope you know that God is big enough to to handle your doubts and your anger and your questions
Hmm.
and your frustration and your bitterness. He is big enough for
Mm.
you to have all the emotions that you have
Mhm.
and to not feel like it's a sign or a lack of faith to have them.
Right.
That it's okay to not be okay in God
Hmm.
because he's big enough.
Right. Mhm.
But a answer, just so I don't, I don't
Wow.
want to ball hog the conversation, but a answer God gave me was, Mia, I'm not a rapist like those people. I am
Hmm.
so big that I allow people to have their choices, even even with their consequences, which may affect you.
Right. Right.
Because a rapist
Wow.
is somebody who takes away your ability to make a choice. You can't even make a choice, good or bad, right? You can't
That's
make a
true.
choice at
Hmm.
all. And so
That's
those
true.
people had
Hmm.
the ability to make a choice, even though it was going to be catastrophic. But
Mhm.
I'm so big that even in people making their catastrophic choices that impact you, I'm so powerful that I can bring beauty out of those ashes.
Mhm.
I can let them make their choice and I can bring beauty out of ashes.
Mhm. And that's an important thing to know
Yep.
because,
Hmm.
when we feel like our God is the God we serve is actually impotent, that he can't help us,
Mm.
and that he
Mm.
is so easily offended that if we let him know we don't like what's happening, that he's just gonna say, "Well, that's it. I just wash my hands of you," you know? So,
There's a lot of
it's so important to
solution,
know we've got a
Nina.
God big enough.
Nina, there are, I mean, but there are so many tests. And as I had said earlier, I don't know if it got cut off or when we were talking, but we were talking about just like lifting weights. If you don't lift weights, weights are heavy. Sometimes the trials and things in life are that testing factor, and it really tests your faith. And
Mm,
you really have to say, dig down deep and say, well, there's got to be a silver lining in these troubles. And a lot of times, people are, I've heard people say, well, I'm not religious, but I'm spiritual. I'm like, well, what kind of spirits are you believing in? Not all spirits are good spirits. And people, they literally turn to spirits. And it was funny. A pastor was talking one time and I heard this sermon, and I never thought of it. Have you ever thought why they call alcohol spirits?
Mhm.
You ever think about
mm,
that? And a lot of people
mhm,
turn to spirits, literally in a bottle. And that spirit, and once you get inside that bottle, now you're trapped. Think about
Right.
that. So
yeah,
all
yeah,
spirits aren't good spirits. And so, we've got to study to show ourselves approved. That's why we have to have that time to really test and see and really look at these things in life and figure out, is this God, or is this something that I could have done better? And a lot of times,
mhm,
like you're saying, Mia and Nina, we've made personal choices that have put us in places and caused effects. I have a dear friend, and I worked with him in the music industry. It was really sad. He passed away back in December, but when he was a young man and he was playing rock music, he did a lot of drugs, and he just thought that
Mhm.
it was the thing back in the 70s. It wasn't no big deal, and those things affected his heart. It damaged his heart. I mean, terribly. And years later, and as we all get older, I tell people all the time, the older you get, you need to hold on to that health. In those younger years, when we have choices, we need to be thinking sober minded. We need to be thinking, you know what? I may, get to be 60, 70 years old. I better hold on to as much health and vitality as I can, and mental health. And Mia, you're on that side. A lot of this mental health that we're seeing seeing going on today is seriously substance abuse. And I mean, and I've always wanted to know from a practitioner standpoint, how do you undo the damage? And that should be a pure warning to anybody out here who are doing illicit or recreational drugs, whatever you want to call it. The point is, how do you undo the damage that has already been done? And now you're starting to see psychoses and different things coming out of it. How do you undo that, or can you?
Could I comment on that? I don't know if you're going to say something, Nina.
I'm sitting here looking at the clock and thinking, "Oh no, we've already run over." But
Ooh, okay.
Rodney,
Well,
what do you
we got
think?
started late. We got
Yeah.
started late, and
Well,
and
even
I
with getting
looked,
started
and I'm
late, we're
like,
still
"What the-"
running over. So, but you know what?
Well,
I'm
let
thinking
her
too.
wrap up that question.
Yeah, let's let her wrap this up. And so
Yeah,
our video, when you watch it later, it'll be a little longer.
yeah.
Hopefully, we're not going to get in trouble with the network about the timing on the scheduling. But Mia, go ahead.
So I'll be really quick. First of all, there's a listener. I don't know how to pronounce your name. Your name starts with a Y. I want you to know
It's actually Carrie. She's got it spelled backwards,
I
and we
really
call her
appreciate
Carrie.
your comment that you've left. So I just wanted to highlight that. Thank you so much. And you're in our hearts, right? Definitely. And so but substance abuse is what I want to talk. Substance abuse, substance misuse, as people say. Um,
Mhm.
First of all, God made the body miraculous. So recovery is always possible, but recovery may look different for every person. And I just wanted to highlight in there, and hopefully you'll have me back on for another show. But to answer your question, recovery is always possible. It may look different for every person, though, right? And the longer the
Mhm.
delay, the more difficult recovery can be. But one thing I
Mm.
just wanted to throw in there as a cliffhanger is sometimes we're looking at people who are battling illicit drug use, but we're missing the people who are using food as their illicit use
True,
or
true,
people as their
Wow.
illicit use, right?
right.
Or some other
Mhm.
habit as their illicit use because it takes the pain away.
Mhm,
Or I feel at least I have a sense of control, right? I
mhm.
I can't control this, I can control that. And just that spirituality piece, if I feel that God is not in control because it doesn't look like it, then at least I can
Mm.
control this, you know? Or
Yeah.
while I'm trying to
Wow.
understand how you're in control, God, this feels good right now, you know? And so that's a whole nother conversation for another day. But I'm so glad we're looking at this because so many young people are deciding not
Yeah.
to be in the faith. And I think it's because
Mhm.
we need to have more of these types of conversations with our church, with our young people, and et cetera, et cetera.
That's right.
I agree. I agree.
Well,
So
Nina,
we're going to
you got
sign
to wrap
off
it
right
up.
now, but the next time she comes, we're going to ask permission for us to go for a full
Mm.
hour because I feel like we just hardly scratched the surface when you're here,
Wow.
and then all of a sudden we're saying goodbye. So
Aw.
the next
Yeah.
time, yeah, and hopefully every time you come on, we will try to do a full hour, and we'll ask permission
Mhm.
for that.
Awesome. Awesome. I
Uh,
can't wait.
Yeah.
We have so much to talk about.
Yes, we do. Yes, we do. All right. So, good morning, everybody, and goodbye for now. And be of good courage. Remember, God is with us, and we are not alone.
Mm.
Bye, everybody.
Bye bye. Bye bye.